The world is watching the Middle East with great concern. The main issue is Iran's nuclear program. For many years, countries have worried that Iran wants to build a nuclear bomb. This would change the balance of power in the region forever. The United States and its ally Israel have worked hard to stop this from happening. They have used sanctions, diplomacy, and covert actions. But the situation has become much more dangerous. Recent events show that the time for quiet diplomacy may be ending. The key question is no longer if a conflict will happen, but who will make the next major move in a fight that has already begun. As of today, June 21, 2025, there is no public proof that Iran has a fully working nuclear weapon. However, this does not mean there is no danger. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, has given a serious warning. They reported this month that Iran is making enriched uranium much faster than before. Enriched uranium is the key ingredient for a nuclear bomb. The IAEA believes Iran could soon have enough material for 10 to 15 weapons. This is a critical point. It means Iran is very close to being able to build a bomb if it decides to do so. This is often called being a nuclear threshold state. This rapid progress has caused great alarm in both Washington and Jerusalem. US and Israeli intelligence agencies have seen a major increase in Iran's work on weapons development since the summer of 2024. This suggests that Iran may have made a political decision to move forward. While the US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, stated in March 2025 that Iran was not actively building a weapon, the evidence on the ground seems to tell a different story. The speed of Iran's program has created a sense of urgency. For Israel, an Iran with nuclear weapons is a threat to its very existence, making the current situation feel like a countdown to a critical decision. The international community is divided on how to respond to this growing crisis. The previous strategy was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, a deal to limit Iran's nuclear work in exchange for lifting sanctions. That deal fell apart years ago. Now the Trump administration in the United States is pushing for a new deal, a JCPOA 2.0, hoping to find a diplomatic solution. But Israel believes that time has run out for negotiations. The fear is that Iran is just using talks to buy more time while it gets closer to its goal. This difference in approach between the US and Israel has added another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. To understand who might strike next, we must first look at who has already struck. The long-running shadow war between Iran and Israel exploded into open conflict in 2024. It was Iran that initiated the first direct, large-scale attacks. On April 13th and 14th, 2024, Iran launched a massive wave of over 100 ballistic missiles and 170 drones toward Israel. This was an unprecedented act. Then, on October 1st, 2024, Iran attacked again with an even larger barrage of more than 200 ballistic missiles. These attacks showed Iran's willingness to engage in direct military confrontation, moving far beyond its usual strategy of using proxy forces. Israel, with help from the United States and other partners, successfully defended against most of these 2024 attacks. However, the events fundamentally changed Israel's strategic calculations. The direct threat from Iranian soil could no longer be ignored or managed from a distance. After months of strategic shifts, including the fall of the Assad regime in Syria and a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon, Israel decided to act. On June 13, 2025, just over a week ago, Israel launched a massive preemptive strike codenamed Operation Rising Lion. This was not a small targeted strike. It was a major military operation aimed at crippling Iran's nuclear program and military infrastructure. Operation Rising Lion was a huge escalation. Israeli warplanes targeted key nuclear facilities at Natanz and Isfahan. They also hit logistical hubs and the command centers of Iran's top security officials. Israel claimed that within 3 days, it had achieved air supremacy over Iran and destroyed 2/3 of the country's ballistic missile launchers. This was a bold attempt to neutralize the Iranian threat in one decisive blow. However, the war did not end there. Iran, though damaged, was not defeated. It responded to Israel's attack with its own missile strikes, and some of these managed to get through Israel's advanced air defense systems, causing civilian casualties. The conflict is now in a new and dangerous phase. The first shots have been fired by both sides in different ways. Iran struck first with direct missile barrages against Israeli territory. In response, Israel struck first with a massive preemptive military campaign against Iran's nuclear program on Iranian soil. This cycle of attack and retaliation has created an open war. The question is no longer about a hypothetical future conflict. The conflict is here. The world is now watching to see what the next move will be in this deadly and escalating fight between two of the Middle East's most powerful nations. In any major conflict, no nation fights entirely alone. If this war expands, both Iran and Israel have allies and supporters they would likely turn to for help. Iran's main strength comes from its network of proxy forces across the region. These groups, often called the Axis of Resistance, include Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthi rebels in Yemen. These groups allow Iran to project power and attack its enemies without always using its own military. On the international stage, Iran would likely receive political and perhaps material support from Russia and China, who often oppose U.S. foreign policy. However, it is uncertain if they would directly join the fight. On the other side, Israel's most important ally is the United States. The U.S. has a long-standing commitment to Israel's security and has provided it with advanced military technology for decades. During Iran's 2024 attacks, the U.S. military played a direct role in shooting down missiles and drones. However, the current Trump administration has been more cautious about being drawn into a new war. While it supports Israel, it is also trying to negotiate with Iran. Israel has formally asked the U.S. for powerful bunker-buster bombs and B-2 stealth bombers to destroy Iran's most protected nuclear sites. President Trump is currently considering this request, which could dramatically escalate U.S. involvement. A critical question for Americans is whether Iran could attack the United States at home. A direct military attack, like a missile strike on U.S. soil, is considered highly unlikely. Iran does not have the long-range missiles or bombers needed to carry out such an attack effectively. Its military is built for regional power, not global reach. The conflict has so far remained focused on the Middle East, and there is no evidence that Iran is planning a conventional attack on the U.S. homeland. The primary threat to the United States would come in other forms, which are harder to defend against. The more probable threats from Iran to the United States would be through less direct means. These include major cyber attacks against critical infrastructure like power grids, financial systems, or government networks. Another significant threat is the possibility of terrorist attacks sponsored by Iran or its proxies. These types of attacks are much harder to predict and prevent than a traditional military invasion. Therefore, while Americans are unlikely to see Iranian jets in the sky, the country must remain vigilant against these asymmetric threats that aim to cause chaos and fear far from the main battlefield. If this conflict continues to escalate, the United States government would likely take several predictable steps. The first step, which is already underway, involves intense diplomatic efforts. The Trump administration is pushing for a new nuclear deal with Iran, while also urging Israel to show restraint. At the same time, the U.S. would continue to provide military support to Israel, especially for defense. If diplomacy fails and Iran makes a significant move, such as a confirmed dash for a nuclear bomb, direct U.S. military action would become more likely. This would probably involve a campaign of air and missile strikes, authorized by the president, targeting Iran's nuclear sites, air defenses, and command structure. The question of how long a fight might last has two different answers. An initial, large-scale air campaign led by the U.S. and Israel could be short and intense. It might last for only a few days or weeks, with the goal of quickly destroying Iran's most important military and nuclear targets. Israeli officials claimed they achieved significant success in the first few days of Operation Rising Lion. This approach focuses on overwhelming the enemy with superior technology and firepower to achieve a swift victory and limit the scope of the war. This is the best-case scenario for those who want a limited conflict. However, there is a strong possibility that the conflict would not be short. Iran has prepared for an attack for years. Its most valuable nuclear facilities like Fordow and another secret site codenamed Pickaxe Mountain are buried deep underground in mountains. These facilities have so far resisted Israeli airstrikes. Destroying them would require a sustained and difficult bombing campaign, likely needing the powerful American bunker-buster bombs that Israel has requested. This points toward a much longer and more destructive war. A protracted conflict could last for many months or even years, becoming a grinding regional war with devastating consequences. Looking ahead, the situation is incredibly fragile. The conflict has already begun, with major attacks from both sides. The next steps are critical. If Iran retaliates further for Israel's operation, or if it is confirmed that Iran is assembling a nuclear weapon, the war will likely expand. The United States faces a difficult choice: fully back Israel's military actions and risk a wider war, or pursue a diplomatic track that may fail to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions. The world now waits to see if the region will pull back from the brink or descend into a prolonged conflict that could reshape the Middle East for generations to come.